For my practicum, I'm creating a graduate assistant manual, and this is what I will be presenting for my proposal. So the three stages of my graduate assistant manual creation process are listed here, which the first stage is my research stage, and the second stage was my data compilation stage, and the third stage was my organization and eventually the creation stage. Stage one, the method of research that I used was interviews. I believe that the best way to figure out what I wanted to know in a position that had little to no record of job description, so to say. The purpose of these interviews were to determine the scope of the graduate assistant position. And what I mean by scope of graduate assistant position is what are the details of the position? What do people think of, like head coaches, administrators, and actual graduate assistants in the position? What do they think of the position, and what all does it entail? And this is what I mean by receive perspective from all levels of athletic department. And that goes from the head, which is the athletic director, all the way down to the GA. You have assistant coaches, you have head coaches. All these people have been in this position or the similar position of an entry-level coach. The next stage is collection and analysis. And so for the collection and analysis stage is where I took my information from my interviews and I put those together and created a checklist. This checklist basically entailed what are the common things that these head coaches, this athletic director, and these graduate assistants, what are the common things that they said? What are the common things that they mentioned that were all a part of this graduate assistant role? Also, I took a copy of my records and I put them together as far as process goals and what all have I done that relate to this graduate assistant position. This is important because the things that I have done are easily transferable to a manual because I know the steps, I know the procedures, I know what it takes for this portion of the manual. Now, stage three is the organization and creation of the manual. So after I gathered all of that information, I put together the information, and the reason it has information structure is because I wanted to organize the manual in a way that flows and the way that the things that the graduate assistant would encounter would be something that it could be easily accessed. And so when I say easily accessed, I mean like if there's an expense report that needs to be turned in, then hey, page 7, I can go to page 7 to refer to the expense report. Now, if there is an expense report that is late, I can flip to page 15 and show what to do in a situation where there's a late expense report. The next thing I wanted to do is after I recorded all the information, I wanted to format. Everything has an order, everything has a structure. So when you format in your pages, you want them to match. You want them to match up so it's easy to look around and I have a pattern. As a graduate assistant, I can go in and I say, oh, well, I know where this type of information is located. Okay. And the last thing I did as far as organizing and creating this manual is I wanted to make sure all the language matched. So if I'm talking about one thing on this page, I want to make sure that that language is consistent with the rest of the manual. And this is important because when you're learning skills, it's easy to pick up things that are like language. That means it's easily transferable. And that's what I did for the 3 stages of my project. And throughout the project, there were a few things that I noticed, and now we're to the discovery section, where these are the areas that I found that I normally wouldn't have noticed. And the first thing that happened that I encountered in my search is scheduling factors. And so when talking schedules and in an athletic department, you have several different sports that have several different playing seasons. And me being the men's basketball graduate assistant, my season goes from fall to spring. So I'm kind of a hybrid. I'm not really a fall sport and I'm not really a spring sport. And we have a technical term, which is winter sports. And so other sports like lacrosse or volleyball or softball or even football is in the fall, volleyball is in the fall, lacrosse is in the spring, and baseball is in the spring. These sports have their own separate calendar and schedule. So therefore, when I am busy, they might not be busy. And so this is a big determining factor of when I'm going to schedule my interviews. So like when who has to do with, am I interviewing the athletic director, which has more on their plate than everybody else, or a head coach, which has more on their plate than a graduate assistant? And when can we do this? And so in that the schedule conflict is really where that comes about. And then the commitment. A coach can commit to something, but there's like no guarantee because in the athletic world, things come up all the time. So you have to be flexible when scheduling. The next area that I learned and there was an outcome of learning in this situation was the process. And so when I'm reading processes and a lot of different things where I'm getting advice from a graduate assistant or getting advice from a head coach, the thing that I learned the most was comprehension. If I can't relay my message in a way that all people can understand, that will be a big mishap in my production of the manual because it is designed to make the job easier. So if I'm using all of these complex words and these words or this language that is really not relatable to the graduate assistant position, it's kind of counterproductive in what I'm trying to accomplish. Also, if I do not record the procedures correctly, that is also counterproductive to what I'm trying to accomplish in creating my manual. Lastly, the importance of keeping record. This manual would have been completely 10 times harder than what it was if I did not keep record of my work. Having record of my work allowed me to easily translate a manual that I could extend my knowledge to others and also create more information off the documents that I have already retained. So this brings me to leadership style and philosophy. I like to think that I am a servant leader. And while putting together my manual, I still control the role of graduate assistant. So as I'm going through my internship, as I'm working with the athletic department to create my manual, I also have this position as a graduate assistant. Now, I wasn't allowed to use my leadership skill in my practicum. This practicum was designed to help me on my information and my documentation as a leader. And so going through this process, I implemented the documentation in my job, which was supervising the team, supervising my managerial team. And with supervising my managerial team, I implemented these servant leadership qualities, which was laundry. If they could not do laundry, I would do it. And I told them if they have a conflict in schedule, let me know so I can help them out and relieve them of their duties. I don't believe that you should always tell someone what to do. I believe that you should, yes, you are the authority figure and you tell them what to do, but you should also work with them to complete their goal. And I am not a boisterous leader. I am more so reserved and I speak up when necessary, but I definitely am not a micromanager. And so my servant leadership style fits my personality. And that is how I would like to lead in the future. So as I was getting to who I led, so my managerial staff and my players, this all was in place as I was creating my manual, and these things were being brought to life as I was going through, and I was making record of what needs to be done in my position and how can I better perform in my position. Now, what do I need? And going through this process, I understand that the whole project was meant to enhance my documentation, my keeping records of things, and my organization. And this is what I needed to become more successful as far as documentation. And the organization I was working for was, of course, Lenore Ryan University. This university allowed me to present my proposal and they accepted it. And the leadership structure was great as far as who allowed me to do what. And the first line of leadership was Kim Pei. I presented her my idea as far as a manual, and she was open and receptive. She realized that we didn't have any structure for new hires and graduate assistants and entry level positions in our department. So she allowed me to conduct my research and is thinking of potentially using my document for new hires and if it is up to par. And Brent Heverland, he is our compliance guy and he's also our associate AD. And he was doing his job as far as educating me in the compliance area and the policies of the department. My skill set that I brought to this manual was I know how to do all the things that graduate assistants are required to do. His strength in creation of the manual was he knows all the technical, all the policies, the code of conduct, those things that will complete the other side of the manual. I have a policy side and then I have a handbook, which the handbook helps you do your day-to-day activity. The policy makes sure you're in line with the university. So that was very helpful in my process of creating this manual. And my more so hands-on supervisor, he allowed me to take the time necessary to create the manual and to do the work and to conduct the interviews, and which was Eric Sullivan. So I had great leadership as far as my internship and creating this manual and eventually helping out the athletic department. The assistance I had with this project was with our business manager, Kay Smith. Kay Smith understands all of the technical ins and outs of the graduate assistant position and how things are done in the process and the way everything is built. So Kay Smith was very instrumental in writing down the process. Some things that I wasn't aware of, she caught me up. And this was very helpful in creating my manual. And I think I had an amazing staff as far as internship organization. They were great. So the current model of our graduate assistant production, the theory behind it is learn as you go. And this model is not very productive. It's you eventually you learn, but you could definitely learn at a faster pace. The productivity, our graduate assistants don't see their best work until their second year when they're ingrained in the program and when they finally have been through all the situations that they need to see to be a productive graduate assistant. The problem with that is at the end of the year, they're moving on to the next position. There's no elevation status as far as within the organization, as far as the Lenoir Ryan University Athletic Department. I think that this manual is a prime example of what we need to do as far as changing our theory and putting it towards help and leadership, as far as these are the written documentation of what needs to be done as far as anything in the athletic department. We have the code of conduct, we have the policies, we have the do's and don'ts as far as NCAA compliance. We also have the roadmap to how I am going to complete my job and what I need to do. And it's all going to be in one place. The convenience of the manual being in one place is tremendous. In conclusion, I think this manual has taught me a lot about documentation and process. A project has many moving parts. There has to be a sign from administration that the product is a representation of the organization. With that being said, the organization is Lenoir Ryan University, and I had to get the athletic director to sign off on my project because I didn't want to put anything out that was against the university's agendas. When there is a mix in department as far as each sport has their own thing, there has to be communication. Each sport has their own events, their own schedule, and the communication, the constant communication between the coaches is very vital, because without each coach's input, this manual wouldn't be as polished as it is. And lastly, time management. And this is something that all leaders need, is time management. In order to get a project done on time and correctly, you need to manage time. And so this project has developed me and allowed me to branch out of side of my comfort zone and getting a planner and planning my days out and planning my project out. And as a leader, I think that is a very effective way and an efficient way to get the job done, as far as how are you going to do this, when are you going to do it, when does it have to be done by. These are the things that are important to becoming a leader and eventually leading a group of people in the right direction.